Welcome to The Growth Equation. This isn't your typical business podcast. We're keeping it real about the challenges of scaling up, period. I'm Tristan Wright and I've been there. I've built and scaled my own business. I've sold it. I've learned a ton along the way. Now I'm bringing you the no BS stories of founders who are in the trenches right now, navigating that messy middle. We're talking advertising, marketing, design, creative, branding, the whole 9 yards. Doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur or running a team of 100. Everyone's got a secret sauce, that thing that makes them different, better. We're going to uncover it. So grab a coffee and let's get real. Today we're talking to Emily from Punch Buggy. Emily, welcome.
Welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Emily, I'd love to hear a bit more about your business and who you are.
So Punch Buggy is a full service digital agency. So we do everything we start with design, building, development, and then go into the marketing on the other side as well. So we kind of hit a few of all of the things you need for a web, being on the web, and mostly focusing on e-commerce.
Awesome. So we were having a conversation just offline. The very first thing I said, Punch Buggy, where did that come from?
So I actually started out as a freelancer, and I was just freelancing and got busier and busier. And at the time I didn't have a mortgage or children. So we were like, well, do I just start turning down work and freelance, or do we turn into a company? And my husband wasn't enjoying his job that much at the time. So we're like, well, you quit and we'll join together. So we joined together and created a company. But when we were looking for a company name, we were really struggling. We didn't want to have just a generic kind of IT services type name, Fitton IT or something like that. We wanted a brand. And every time we thought of something good, the domain name had already been taken. And we were just like, this is crazy. And we were driving along and my husband saw a Punch Buggy and gave me a tap on the arm. We're like, Punch Buggy, that could work. And so we were like, no, someone will have taken it, it's for sure. And so we looked it up and someone had just let the domain lapse. So it was actually an aged domain already. So that was quite useful in terms of rankings. So we snapped it up and kind of went from there.
And the rest is history. So
absolutely.
Do you often have people asking questions where that name came from?
And particularly our international clients, no idea what it means. So we have to kind of explain to them it's a game, like that you play in the car.
I've got a client, he's Kiwi, he's New Zealander, and his company, a web design agency, it's called Chili Bin.
Okay, nice.
So Aussies don't know what a chili bin is. In Australia, it's an esky. So similar sort of concept. All of these Australian or Singapore clients ask, what does this mean? Where does this?
Yes, I bet.
Yeah. So how long ago did you guys start the business?
We've been going about 14 years now.
Oh, wow. So
yes, so a while.
Not many small business owners can say they've been in business for 14 years. So,
it's like it's crazy that it's been that long. Time just seems to go so fast, especially now I've had kids. Like it just, where you've got something to measure it by, it just seems to fly by. But it's been quite a journey along the way, for sure.
Yeah, I want to hear a bit about that journey, especially with especially having kids growing up around a business. So, so I imagine there's a lot of juggling in there.
A lot of juggling, yes.
Priorities.
School holidays at the moment, so that's a juggle. It's but it's been quite nice, to be honest. Like when I started out, we were very young and no mortgage, no kids, and we were working 7 days a week, just punching through as much work as we could. We took on our first employees. One of them was still working in high school. He's an awesome coder, like just brilliant, but he could only work like one half day and then Saturdays, so we'd always go into the office on Saturdays just so he could work a half day with us as well. So we're doing a lot of things like that kind of all has to stop a little bit once you've got kids and you have to kind of juggle all of that. But it's been nice. So the way we tend to work it at the moment is that I start a bit later, so I might start about 9:30 and I'll do all the kids drop-offs and stuff like that. And my husband starts really early. And then then he finishes early and goes and picks them up, and I work later. So that's kind of
Yeah.
how we balance it at the moment, which is quite nice.
Yeah, awesome. How big's your team at the moment? Or where
So
are
we've
you?
got 13 of us altogether. Yeah.
Awesome. And is that the largest you've got to?
No, we had up to 20 at one point. But yeah, we kind of scale up and down, depending on clients coming through and, what's going on in every. So during COVID, we had quite a few move up to Queensland, so they now work from home. So we had a really large office in the centre of Mona Vale on the northern beaches of Sydney. And we've now moved into a co-working space, and we've got a private office in a co-working space because everyone was basically didn't come back after COVID.
Yeah.
They all just continued to work from home, which is, great. Like it's nice anyway for them to be able to do that. And like a couple of them moved to Queensland so they could buy a house and things like that. So, it's given us that kind of little bit of flexibility, kind of moving around. And we've now moved into this co-working space. We've got other businesses around that we can kind of bounce ideas off and things like that, which is nice.
And I'm sure you can you'll share work with them or learn from
Yeah.
them. So
Absolutely. So downstairs the office is a warehouse, and they're a 3PL. So obviously they've got a lot of e-commerce clients. So we're always bouncing ideas off them, and they send us work and we send them work and things like that. So yeah, it's nice collaboration.
Yeah, awesome. So highs and lows, like going through this journey, what's been the biggest surprise for you, or the biggest that you weren't expecting through this journey, business growth?
I think the biggest surprise has been like the loyalty of our staff. Oh, excuse me. And because they're really wonderful staff that we work with. Like that, when we've had one of the guys, our designer has been with us for all of those 14 years, and it's just been such a journey that we've all gone along together, and it really does feel like quite family. With like all our staff coming together, it's really lovely.
Hey, you just said one of your staff has been with you for 14 the whole
Yeah,
year.
so he was freelancing, and we got him to do our branding and all, and our design for our website initially, because I work on the development side. I'm a developer, so that's what I was doing freelancing. I would basically work with designers. They'd pass me a design and I'd go and build it for them, and so we found him, and we just got like busier and busier. And because he was freelancing, obviously he had other clients, and he was struggling to fit enough of our work in. So we're like, okay, like we just had a very open conversation with him. We need to hire someone because we've got enough design capacity to take someone on full time now. And he said, well, will you take me on full time? I'm like, well, yeah, like we obviously love your work. So yeah, he's basically been with us from the start, and yeah, he's a really integral part of our business.
That's awesome. So the fact that someone's stayed with you for 14 years is really cool. So we touched on it earlier, but prioritizing competing demands. Like you've got family, you've got the business. Like a lot of our listeners will have a family, will have young children, primary school, high school. So
yeah, look, it's definitely a juggle. That's for sure. But it is nice that my husband and I work together, so that we can kind of balance that. Like if one of us was kind of working full time in the city or something like that, it'd be much harder to balance. So we do have that one of the joys of owning your own business is having that flexibility. It does mean often working late into the night or waking up early and going into the office early, things like that, or even coming in on weekends and doing stuff. But because we have that flexibility, we can, and the kids getting a little bit older now, it was harder when they were younger, but we can now work from home, and they'll be milling around watching TV downstairs and things like that. So that has become a little bit easier as they have got older. When they were younger, we obviously had them in daycare, but we'd also each only work 4 days, which meant we had a mum day and a dad day each for the kids. So that was really lovely too. Like I said, it's the joys of the flexibility of working. You work maybe longer hours and things like that, and more kind of weird hours, but it is flexible. And again, the same with working in web, really. We're not having to necessarily work strict hours. We can get the work done kind of in our own time.
Yeah. How do you manage like your business partner is your life partner and boundaries?
It's funny because like, so we met when we were traveling. So we met in Vancouver airport, and like I'd only just left home, and I had loads of baggage and stuff like that, and we're at Vancouver. We're at the baggage carousel at Vancouver airport, and my husband came and approached us, me and my friend who were traveling, because we had all our snowboards, all our gear. We were all ready to go. We had everything planned. We've been planning it for years. And he approached us and said, "Look, looks like you know what you're doing. Can I follow you?" Basically, because I want to go and do a snow season. He turned up with just his backpack and stuff. We ended up getting the same job together when we were traveling. So we worked as cleaners in Whistler for a year and did that together. And then we did a long distance relationship for 2 years. I went back to the UK to do my degree. And then even after I finished my degree, we ended up working in the same company again. So it's kind of always been like, if I don't really know much different when from a working point of view, we've almost always worked together.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's quite different.
Awesome. Yeah. Like, I don't think many people would have that journey.
No.
Would be able to be similar like that. And so the fact that since you've known him, you've always done some form of work together. So yeah, that's cool. So maintaining like that balance, like family versus business, how do you, like, there's times where you have to work long hours, the kids need you as well.
Yeah, look, it can be a struggle, and like there's times where I feel like I might shout at the kids because I'm stressed about something at work, or and then I feel really bad about doing that. So you get a lot of that guilt, or I'll have to just leave them to it, and because the phone's ringing, I'm going no, or I do a lot of this in the background when I'm on a call because they'll start coming in the room. It's also one of the reasons I love having the office. So my office is only about 200 meters down the road from our home. So I can walk here, I can ride a bike here, but I love having that separation. My husband likes to work from home much more than I do, but he seems to also be able to ignore the chores a lot more than I can. I see everything that needs doing around the house. I love being able to get away from that and have my own quiet space at the office.
Yeah, awesome. AI.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
So realistically, as a developer, our jobs will probably not be around in 5 years. So, with the way that AI is going, and even now, I've got it open on my screen, like I'm using it to write code for me. It dramatically speeds up. It doesn't write code that just works. You still have to, manipulate it and change it in to make it work, but it does all the base work for me. So we're already using it a huge amount. I know that Ryan, my husband, has been doing a lot of talks for Shopify, and the way that they're using AI in all of their things, so you can get it to write product descriptions for you, manipulate the images for you, and it just really helps your brands stand out. So like when you're looking in Google Shopping, for example, and all of the images for one product look exactly the same, it makes it very difficult to pick one over the other. You're just always going kind of bottom of the barrel price. So if you can make your listing stand out that much more, then that's obviously going to help you in terms of click-through rates and conversions. So just using it just in it's such a simple thing to do, just to get it to manipulate the image for you, whereas previously it used to take so long to kind of change images and go into Photoshop and manipulate them, and even just have the ideas on how to and how to make that stand out. So we're using AI quite a bit at the moment. So
you said you feel your role might be gone in 5 years. Is it every developer's role, or will it change? Will the developer change from being a doer to a coordinator?
Yeah, essentially. You still have to train the AI, and you still have to know what to ask it, to ask it the right questions. And there's still, like I said, there's still those tweaks that you have to do. That will get better and better, and there'll be less of those tweaks. But with any software, there's bugs and things like that. And AI writing code is no different. It still writes buggy code. So it'll turn more from actually writing the code by hand to more asking the AI the right questions, checking the code, making sure it's doing all the right things, and kind of QAing and testing it at the other end.
So what does that mean for your business? What's it going to look like in 5 years' time?
So we've already seen a huge change just in the last 2 years. We used to have, the majority of our staff used to be developers. And we were always very development heavy because I started the business and that's the part of the business I love. So we've always done a lot of custom work. We do a lot of custom integrations and things like that. And that has dramatically kind of dropped down. So last year we had to let a couple of developers go, made a couple of developers redundant just because that work isn't around as much anymore. When we first started, we were doing, we were even coding websites by hand. We don't do it that nearly as much anymore. Like we might do that for really big brands who want something very unique. But a lot of the time we're using page builders and stuff like that and then just manipulating those. Or we might even with Shopify, we might use a base theme and then just do some modifications to it because those are already so good. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. So that's one, it's sped up a lot of the development we do, but also we don't need as much in the way of development to make a website live anymore.
Yeah, okay. So that's the changes that have happened now. But moving forward, let's go to 2030. What does the business look like?
Yeah, so I think you'll see more of that where you might need a developer to do small tweaks, but less and less. A lot of it you can do yourself, but also I see it moving much more to strategy. So the problem with using AI is it gives everybody exactly the same strategy, which is that's fine. Like if you're just starting out and you just need a base strategy. But when you start to really dig into the data and things like that, I think that's the way we'll much more be going down the path of, okay, well, where do you take your business from here, and doing more strategy plans, doing more roadmaps for features and stuff like that, rather than spending time actually just building things.
Yeah, totally. It's moving to strategy, more thinking and letting AI doing the doing.
Yes.
The work.
So that's where AI will never beat a human brain is that kind of imagination.
Yes.
So that's where the real skills lie in terms of creating a unique strategy for things.
Yeah. So you said your business has been, like, you started out just the two of you, gone up to 20, it's now at 13.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the bit of the roller coaster. Like, what would you say has been the highest point on the roller coaster and the lowest point on the roller coaster?
So we had some, when we had our team of 20, it was the problem with scaling. What we found is that you can go up and up in terms of scale, but what we found is that it just created more stress and less profit, essentially. So we found that kind of sitting between the 10 and kind of 15 mark is our happy place. We tried to go up and scale and scale and scale, but it just created more stress. And we weren't making any more profit for it. But it was really nice having that team because at that time, we were all in Mona Vale in the office, and it was a really nice kind of collaboration, and it just felt like a lovely team. That has definitely changed. COVID was like a really weird time. It was very stressful at first, very stressful because everyone cancelled everything. All the marketing got cancelled, projects got put on hold, and we were like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to, we don't want to, have to make anyone redundant just because of this. And then the government money came in, and, it actually ended up for us quite a nice time because we had the kids at home. That was stressful enough as it was. My son had just gone into kindergarten. He did about 3 months of kindergarten before he went into homeschooling. So he couldn't read, he couldn't write, he couldn't do anything by himself. So having to homeschool him, like that by itself was enough stress without having to do the work on top. So the government kind of propping us up at that time was essential, really. But yeah, that was incredibly stressful. And that's, kind of reshaped our business a little bit. It gave us time to take stock of what was working and what wasn't working in the business and where we really wanted to kind of push things.
Yeah, so you narrowed down your niche to focused on
Yeah, absolutely. So we focused much more on doing, Shopify for a start. That went did a lot of freebies during that time as well, just to help. We had a lot of calls from businesses, local businesses that needed to get online and do click and collect because people weren't allowed to go into their stores, but they could do click and collect. So we'd set up a lot of people online that wouldn't have necessarily been online previously. So we kind of, and, you know, we saw the power of Shopify, you know, just for, you know, Shopify's like, we're a very agnostic business in terms of the platforms we use. We try and pick the best platform for the task rather than just forcing everyone down one path. And Shopify is really perfect for that kind of e-commerce store that is very kind of structured in that it's got products, it sells them, it ships them, all of that kind of thing is perfect. If you try and do anything kind of outside of that box, it gets a lot trickier in Shopify because it's all a closed box system. But yeah, so it did really help us kind of understand where that sat in the market and its benefits.
Yeah, awesome. So you said you got that, say that 15 to 20. When you got to 20, you weren't making much more profit there at 13.
No, we're making less profit.
Yeah, I tell all of my clients, like 16 to 23 is like the death zone. You need to be either side of that. Once you're at 15, if you want to go to 16, you need to be at 24 as soon as possible.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It was very difficult. And at the time, you know, that's when I then had the kids as well. So that kind of added that extra stress on top of, you know, making less profit and more staff to manage and more projects coming in and all of that kind of thing. So it was at the time where I had my second child that we really went, okay, we're going to take this back down in size again for a while. And that's been a nice kind of balance. That's where we've stuck between 10 and 15 for a while now, and it's been a nice balance.
Yeah, like it's not too big for you not to be able to be across everything, but you've got enough staff that you can step away for a bit if you need to.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, like obviously if you can get to that 24, you can probably take a month or 2 months off and it'll run smoothly. So that's probably the difference.
I mean, I find holidays difficult, to be honest. I never truly switch off, and that's my main issue. My husband's always complaining because I check my emails too often. But I do like to keep across everything that's going on. So yeah, I always find holidays. I love taking a holiday, and we do a lot of traveling. And we did take a couple of years ago where we went to Canada for a month. And that was really lovely. But I always have in the back of my mind what's going on at work, you know, and I think that's just one of the perils of owning your own business. It's always there. Since we've owned our own business, I don't feel like I've ever truly just switched off from it. You're always thinking, even if you have like, the projects are going well, I'm then thinking, okay, well, what should we be doing in our business rather than on the projects? So there's always that in the back of your mind, you know, going, okay, what's next?
Yeah. And if you're not like, you feel like your business is going backwards, you do have to be able to manage it. But yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Growth in like, so how do you how do I ask this question? How do you ensure your business growth aligns with your personal values and goals? Because I imagine that you've got different value. You and your husband have got values and goals. How do you ensure that the business aligns with that?
Yeah. So we've done a lot in the business, and again, it's evolved. It's definitely evolved over time. You know, a focus when we had a lot of staff was a lot on the staff, and just making sure that, you know, like we wanted it to be a fun environment to work in and things like that. Like I said, that's completely changed since no one came back to the office after COVID. And now it's much more of a focus on, you know, making sure that they have that work-life balance. You know, we do a thing where we make sure that we don't do any changes on a Friday. No changes go live on a Friday because we're not ruining anyone's weekend. If the changes aren't ready by Thursday, they're not going live till Monday. So we kind of do things like that just to try and make sure that everyone else has that same work-life balance that we want to aim for as well. So that's been a real kind of key for us, but also with the customers. And it's one of the reasons that, you know, I'm constantly checking emails because I don't ever want a customer to have a bad experience. things go wrong. There's always, there's something, that some things you just are out of your control. But I want to make sure that, we're always kind of communicating with customers and things like that. And, that's really key for our business. We don't do projects and then just go, okay, well, you're on your own now. Our clients, and again, we've had clients for the whole 14 years that we've been going. They've just stuck with us because we just we build relationships with our clients, and we've been very lucky. It's just, it's one of the things that we kind of try and focus on is just making sure that we have that communication line there. With our with clients, our really big clients, we might have a Slack channel with them. We've always got our project coordinator sitting on the emails, making sure she's responding, making sure projects are kind of being updated all the way through. And then we'll have clients where we always sit down every year and do a roadmap for them. Okay, well, what are you doing with your marketing this year? What are you doing with your business, like your website this year? And we'll sit down and do some strategy with them at the beginning of each year. And so that's been a real key as well. We've been very lucky. We're terrible at marketing ourselves. Like we almost never do our own marketing. Because we just have so much referral work.
Yeah, and that's normal. So you told me about a lot of good things and a lot of things that you've been able to get through, but I want to hear about a hurdle where you're like, I don't know what to do now.
So there's been times where we've had, I guess, issues with the technology. So a lot of websites, so because I started out as a developer, we often take on websites that other agencies will put in the too hard basket, because I am able to just jump in and make changes and things like that. But there are also times where we've taken on projects and they've just kind of ballooned, because it's very hard to see what's underneath. It's a bit like a builder kind of going, oh yeah, I can build you an extension, and then finding asbestos. It's just, so there are times where we've just had to go, no, we're calling it. And just kind of mutually parted with a client, because we're just like, well, it's costing you too much money and this just isn't working for either party. So that's the hardest thing. We haven't had to do it often, but that's always the hardest conversation to have, and knowing when to call it. Ryan's much better at making those judgment calls than I am. I'm very much a yes person, and he's like, pull it back down, Emily. You don't say yes to everything. Let's work it out first. So he's much better at those conversations than I am.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you don't have those conversations, they can drag on for months and for years.
And then everyone comes out with a bad taste, because we're doing work for free because everything's just taking way longer than it should have done, and they're not getting the work done as fast as we maybe said we could do it in, and it's just a vicious cycle. So it's much better to, I've learned over time to try and say yes less, and analyze things first, but also to make those calls a bit earlier and have those conversations much earlier. If you can have a conversation and say, look, this is what we found, much earlier on, then it's not so much of an awkward conversation when you go, nah, we can't do it anymore.
Yeah, you're transparent from the front and say, look, it actually is a bit scarier than we thought originally.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a scary conversation to have. When it was when we first started the business, I was very young. And I'd never run my own business before. I just always worked for other people who'd had to make those calls on my behalf. So it's much scarier when it's you having to make those calls, and particularly when you're starting out and you just want to take on every project because you're trying to build and you're trying to prove yourself and get out there. I think what comes with experience is knowing when to take a step back. And knowing when to have those conversations early on, so you don't have to have the awkward conversations later on.
Yeah. So you touched on the fact that you started this business when you were relatively young. Do you classify yourself now as a dev or a business owner?
I like to classify myself as a dev, really. The business owning side of it, I feel like my husband does a better job than I do of that side of things. He's much better kind of leader. He's much better with the operations. But I really like mentoring the devs. That's really where I love to sit. I love doing project management, that side of things, but I also still very much get my hands dirty with the code as well.
Who looks at the finance and does the forecasting?
Oh, my husband. I'm terrible at that too.
Do you hide from it almost?
I do. I definitely hide from it. I find the numbers very scary, especially when you're at, like, when you've got wages going out and things like that. I find that, like, I'm like, I don't even know how we're making this much money to pay all these wages. But it's like, yeah, no, we are. The work comes through and we're knocking it out. And okay, yeah, well, they look very scary to me.
Why don't you, like, you went and taught yourself code or learned code? Why don't you go and learn that side of the business?
Um, Look, I could. I
Mm.
probably not the finances. Like I said, I find those very scary. But the operations and the HR side of things, I could definitely do more of. Yeah, like coding was something I fell into actually. Like I did my A levels in the UK, and I didn't get the grades to do the degree I wanted to do. So I rang up the university I wanted to go to, and I went through clearing, and they said, look, with the grades you've got, you can do this course and this course. And one of them was computer science. And they said, you can do that course. And then just after your first year, just change courses. Because once you're in the university, you can change. It's just getting in the first place. So I went and did computer science for a year, and I got all distinctions across the board. I came out with a first in my year, and I went, I think I found what I'm good at. Like for the first time in my life, like I've always been very mediocre at kind of everything. Like I was very average at music. I was very average at sport. I was like, I found something I'm good at. So I kind of stuck with the coding.
You've been stuck in it ever since.
Yeah,
So
I still love it. I still love it.
that's awesome. Like, you wake up every day and you love what you're doing. So
Yeah, I do. And
yeah,
yeah, it's really the devs. Yeah, I very much love the dev side. And I love the designing of it as well. So like, part of the course was like software engineering, and
yeah,
just architect. Like a lot of the stuff we do now, like I said, is already built, right? So, we're doing less of the custom builds, but I do a lot of joining everything together. So, connecting things, particularly with Shopify, everyone will have some random accounting software or some random 3PL we have to connect with and things like that. They all have their own systems. So we do a lot of just connecting them together. And I love that kind of architecting and automating everything. And it just makes everyone, like, just looking at other people's businesses and kind of smoothing all of those things out is really, I love doing that.
yeah, it's fun. What advice, like, would you give to other business owners that are going through this growth journey? If you could give one piece of advice, what would that be?
Be prepared to not be making profit in that 16 to 24, like you said. If you really want to push past that, you're going to have to take the hits during that stage, and have a think about whether you want a lifestyle business, which is essentially what we've now built, or whether you want to take it to that next level, and what your real goals are in terms of, because there will be this kind of big gap in the middle where you're making less money before you get to that kind of larger stage.
Yeah, that's a sage piece of advice. Work out where you want to get to, what you want for business, and determine, is it that lifestyle business, and if so, stick at that 10 to 15, or is it, do you want heaps and heaps and heaps of money and
Yeah.
and all that kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, when like I said, we were young, when we first started scaling, we were like, yeah, we can do this, this is awesome. But I think once you get in there and, once we had our family and things like that, you reprioritize a little bit. And that's where we kind of went, no, you know what? I'm happy to be able to go and pick my kids up after school and then maybe do another couple of hours after that. Like that's really where we're sitting at the moment. And that might change again, in a few years' time, once they're older at their high school and, they're kind of doing their own thing. Maybe we'll reevaluate then. But for now, it's working really nicely.
That's awesome. Emily, what's the best way for people to connect with you if they wanted to get in touch?
So our website, punchbuggy.com.au, or you can email us at info@punchbuggy.com.au.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
No worries. Thank you.
Cheers. That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into The Growth Equation. If you've enjoyed the show, hit that subscribe button and leave a review. It helps us big time. Catch you next time. And if you want more, head over to evolvetogrow.com.au for show notes and exclusive content.